1.13 million mail ballots for this election. And as of 8 p.m., more than 80% of those ballots had been returned. It's important to remember that counties could not begin counting those mail ballots until 7 o'clock this morning in Pennsylvania. And the last of those ballots were received by 8 p.m. tonight, only about an hour or so ago. We know everyone wants results as soon as possible, but counties must first make sure every eligible ballot is accurately and securely counted, and that is a process that takes time. You can find the latest unofficial results as counties submit them on the Department of State's website at electionreturns.pa.gov. Remember, these results are unofficial until certification occurs in a few weeks. Finally, I want to thank our partners at the federal, state, and county government level who worked hard to ensure the safety and security of this election. And now I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about a threat that had occurred at a Dauphin County polling location? It was at the Paxtonia Elementary School around 3 p.m.
That's right. Our understanding was that there was a bomb threat targeting that school. Our department immediately reached out to the election director of Dauphin County. Our understanding was that it prevented voting from taking place for approximately 20 minutes, and approximately 20 voters were turned away during that time, and then the polling place was reopened. It's also understanding from the election director there that the threat was not in any way specific to this election, although the threat did affect voting for a short period of time at that polling place in Dauphin County.
And was this one of numerous polling locations that had received a threat across the Commonwealth, or was it just this one?
My understanding is it's the only polling place that received a threat this election. It's curious these days to actually describe things like it's the only place, because we have, in some previous elections, had this occur as it's happened across the country with greater frequency, unfortunately. But it's something we prepare for, it's something our counties prepare for, and make an assessment whether a threat is credible or not to determine what the correct remedial steps would be to allow voting to continue uninterrupted. Carter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Do you have any more information about what the specific cause of the poll book printing error was in Chester County?
It appears that when Chester County did what's called a poll book extract, as in prior to poll books being printed, and voters in Chester used or poll workers in Chester used printed poll books. That extract only included voters who were registered in the major parties, meaning voters who are registered Democratic and voters who are registered Republican, and did not include anyone else. That is something that you sometimes see counties do correctly in a primary election where there are no ballot questions and independent voters or non-affiliated voters or third-party voters aren't able to participate in that primary election. So it appears that Chester did that poll book extract and only included major party voters. So we work closely with them to generate what are called supplemental poll books. Supplemental poll books are used very frequently in elections for voters who registered at the very last minute but before the deadline, but after poll books are sent to be printed. And then they're distributed throughout the county for any precinct where a voter registered but did not appear in the poll book prior to it being printed. In this case, that was a larger number of voters, certainly far larger than what you would normally have in a supplemental poll book. So we worked with the county to assist them in generating the supplemental poll books that included all voters who had been omitted when the poll books were printed. And again, that includes, it's easier to describe who it included rather than who it excluded, in the sense that, again, it included Democrats and voters registered in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, but no one else.
Thank you. And if I may follow up, an election director I was speaking with today pointed out to me that if Chester County, as you pointed out, they use paper poll books. If they had been using electronic poll books, perhaps the need for voters to vote provisionally in that time when the supplemental poll books were being printed could have been avoided, but only if those poll books were allowed to be connected through the internet to the county's voter database so that they could be updated automatically. The state doesn't currently allow that connectivity, but I understand election directors have been asking for that for some time. Is that something that the department is considering changing?
There have been some election directors asking for that. When I went, as you know, to visit the election directors in all of our 67 counties, some requested poll book connectivity. Some said that they would get electronic poll books if there were connectivity. Others said they will never get electronic poll books. And others who had electronic poll books said that they like electronic poll books, but they would never want that connectivity. So there isn't complete unanimity when it comes to our counties. We have a minority of our counties who use electronic poll books at this point. It is something that we have been constantly reassessing and working with OA on to determine what steps would need to be taken prior to permitting counties with electronic poll books to establish that connectivity in real time. One thing that we do require, and the counties have done, rightly so, is when they use electronic poll books, they also print a paper poll book backup. So if there is an issue, if service is somehow interrupted or anything like that with an electronic poll book, they can fall back and use a paper poll book as well.
Thank you.
Of course. I want to add and stress again that although non-affiliated, unaffiliated third-party voters were not included, there were provisional ballots available at the polling places for those voters to use to vote, so voting could continue in a way that was uninterrupted. Every one of these things in every county spends months, probably about 6 months, preparing for the next election to avoid any issues on election day. When issues do occur, however infrequently, the most important thing is that counties are prepared to deal with those issues when they occur to prevent a situation where voters can't vote. We work closely with our counties to do this. We establish a training unit to help train newer election directors to minimize opportunities for mistakes to even occur. But the most important point after an issue is identified is that everybody focuses on how to correct that issue to allow voting to continue uninterrupted.
There are some reports, might be too strong a word, claims that provisional ballots were running out at some of the precincts. Do you have any idea of whether or not those were credible, if any of the precincts ran out of provisionals or anyone was prevented from being able to vote for that reason?
I did see some chatter on social media related to it. Judges of elections at every polling place, at every precinct, as they go through using provisional ballots, when they begin to run low, they are trained in advance of every election to reach out to the Board of Elections to receive more provisional ballots so they never run out. When that occurs, the county will run additional provisional ballots out there so that they don't run out. We know that Chester immediately began preparing additional provisional ballots. And one thing that was very encouraging is other counties stepping up to offer assistance to Chester County. So Philadelphia County and Delaware County provided additional provisional ballot envelopes, which are more difficult to generate in real time, so that Chester would have access to the resources that it needed and the materials that it needed to provide additional provisional ballots to its polling places, which is encouraging to see. You know, you have 67 counties, but really everyone cares that everyone else is successful, and everybody wants everyone else to be successful. And, you know, no county wants to be in a position on election day where they face challenges like this. So the fact that other counties really stepped up to assist Chester, I think, is encouraging.
And a clarification on the poll book extract. So that was an extract that was performed for the current status of registered voters only for the major parties and not a repeat of the May primary extract?
That's my understanding, because if it had been, let's say, reprinting the primary extract, it would not have included Democratic and Republican voters who registered to vote after the primary. And I haven't heard any suggestion that those voters were not captured in the poll book extract that they did. So it is, again, typically an extract that you would use in a primary election and never use in a general election.
May I ask another?
Of course.
So in different systems, sort of different foundational issues that led to this problem as to Cambria in the fall, where their ballots were misprinted with the timing marks.
Yes.
But they both resulted in sort of a similar phenomenon of near the election, there has to be a bunch of files exported and led for printing. And then the whatever mechanism that could have been used to check to make sure that was accurate wasn't included. So is there an indication that election offices are running, on thin margins? Is election administration being pressured in a way where these mistakes are increasing in frequency, or is this just one of those things where there happens to be a couple of mistakes that happen back to back?
We require, as you know, all counties to conduct logic and accuracy testing prior to every election to make sure that you don't have issues. That logic and accuracy testing is focused on making sure that when voters vote, their choices are tabulated accurately and recorded accurately. In this case, it involved a poll book extract, and counties, I know certainly ours did, would check poll books in advance prior to distributing them to make sure that the things looked, right and accurate in advance. But we'll certainly be meeting with Chester County. We'll be meeting with their vendors, just as we do after every election, whenever there are issues, to find out what we can do and what authority we have to require any other additional steps for counties to take to avoid any issues from occurring on election day.
I have one final question.
Please.
Was there an issue earlier in the day with the state's daily mail-in ballot report? We were having some trouble downloading it on multiple devices. Not sure if that was something that was experienced across the state, maybe?
It's not an issue that I heard in the course of the day.
Okay.
I'm not denying that that could have happened, but it's not something that I heard.
Thank you.
Carter.
Yes, kind of along the lines of Jordan's last question, Luzerne County also had an issue during election day that presumably might have been caught during logic and accuracy testing. I'm sure you saw their Supreme Court race was mislabeled as Superior Court. Do you have any indication how that happened and why it wasn't caught in pre-election testing? And additionally, this hasn't been the only issue Luzerne County has experienced with this election alone. Do you have any idea of what's happening there?
Luzerne County over the past several years has had a lot of turnover. Fortunately, a couple years ago, they brought in a new election director who I think has done an excellent job. It's very dedicated, attends our trainings and all the rest. I did see the issue that you describe. Just to be clear, the Supreme Court retention, the title of the race was accurate, retention for Supreme Court. What's called the question, which is should this justice be retained for, and it said Superior Court instead of Supreme Court. The ballot that is printed out also had it accurate, entitled accurately. So the only place where it occurred was in the description of the race. One thing that is important is it only came to our attention at around 12:30 today. It was not something that I think, in our understanding, anyone even noticed prior to that. So hopefully it would not have had an impact in voters making a selection at all, because again, the title was accurate. The ballot, the voter proofs was accurate. but the description for that race said Superior and not Supreme Court. That's less of a logic and accuracy issue and more of a proofing issue. In my experience running elections, high turnout elections are challenging in their own way. But this particular election cycle for our counties is by far the most challenging. With the number of races, with the number of candidates, with all the retention races and all the rest, it is one of the most complex elections for any county to run. For example, in Philadelphia, when you vote by mail, the entire second page was all retention races for Supreme, Superior, Commonwealth, Common Pleas, Municipal, and all that. Plenty of other counties have coroners running, or township supervisors, or school board members, or all the rest. And that's one thing that makes this election cycle particularly challenging when it comes to proofing all of those things. The proof that the county provided us in advance, because we do proof state offices, statewide offices, anything like that, that was correct. Jordan.
Again, there's this situation where the proofing that where they provide to you was accurate in advance, but then when they go to do the actual export for the election, there's an error. Is there something within, would that be a county-specific election management system problem? Would that be somehow a problem with Sure that could be fixed with some sort of programmatic, make sure you check your math and you don't have the wrong updates problem? Like, is there some sort of system change that could prevent these kinds of issues?
For the issues you described, it's really a proofing issue or a logic and accuracy testing issue that is conducted by county officials or the vendors that they bring on to assist them to prepare for the election. As you know, the Pennsylvania Department of State has immense responsibility, but very discrete authority. There are certain things that we do have the ability to require counties to do, and others that we cannot necessarily require counties to do. No one at the county level ever wants to get anything wrong, ever, under any circumstances, whether it's a typo or a mislabeled race or a misspelled name or something like that. They're very well aware of the importance of proofing. They're very well aware of the importance of logic and accuracy testing. And I know it's very challenging for them when something like this occurs.
And then, since there will be such a significant number of provisional ballots, at least considering local races in Chester County, could you describe the process for how those provisional ballots were kept secure in precincts, how they're returned to the election office, and the process that they'll have to go through before they can be counted?
They're returned, they're time-stamped, they're organized probably by ward and precinct prior to review. The county will first complete mail ballots that are returned so that it can record whether a voter voted by mail already. They will update to record all the voters who voted in person on election day before determining whether a provisional ballot can be counted or not. Because if the voter voted in person on election day or the voter voted by mail, their provisional ballot would not count. Then it begins an excruciating process of reviewing the provisional ballot to ensure that, not the ballot envelope, to ensure that it's completed correctly, to ensure that the voter's a registered voter. If they're registered in one precinct and they vote in a different precinct, only the votes will count for the races that are the same in both precincts. It will not count for a voter voting in a race they were not otherwise eligible to vote for. And that process takes time. That process takes place with observers from the parties and candidates in the room, if they choose, to sort of scrutinize the whole process. One thing that I would like to mention is that early this year, we worked very closely with the counties to redesign the appearance of the declaration envelopes. As you might know, a couple years ago, we worked with the counties to redesign the appearance of the declaration envelopes for mail-in ballots. This past year, we worked with the counties to redesign and provide a template to improve the appearance of the declaration envelope for provisional ballots. Many counties opted to have new ballots printed, ballot envelopes printed, to use this new template, which is more user-friendly and will minimize the opportunity for mistakes the same way that the mail-in ballots did. Thank you. I don't anticipate a need for another press conference later this evening. If any other issues do arise, we'll make sure to notify everyone and alert them. Jordan.
One more question for you.
Of course.
So if I understand correctly, the provisional ballot review process can be observed by the major parties. But given that the number of people who were submitting provisional ballots in this race were people who were independents or third-party affiliated, is there not a mechanism for media or any other kind of representatives who are not affiliated with major parties to observe this, or are they excluded?
I would approach Chester County to find out how they are going to arrange it. I can only speak from my own experience. We set up like an area for press to be present to observe kind of the process, but I would reach out to Chester about what procedures they expect and how accommodating they can be, obviously within the confines of the law, as they conduct the provisional ballot review process. Okay? Yeah, thank you all. I also want to mention, I thank the voters and I thank the poll workers and I thank everybody else. I always want to make a point of thanking you all for the important role that you have in educating voters about elections, especially at this time where people have so much access to information and so much of that information is incorrect. So the role that you play in really strengthening confidence in our election process and in our democratic republic is something that I very much appreciate and just want to express that to you. Thank you.